can be automated a part of continuous delivery that clones a repository, modifies the manifest with the new release, and pushes those changes back to Git. Can we do that without using pipelines? The short answer is yes. And for a slightly longer answer, well, you will have to watch the video. GitOps is all about defining the desired state and storing it in Git, and then letting tools like Argo CD, Flux, and a few others synchronize the desired state, what is in Git, and the actual state, which are your resources, which could be applications, infrastructure services, or anything else. That means that every time we build a new release of an application, we need to clone the repository that contains the desired state, change a few entries in manifests, and push those changes back to Git. We can do that manually, like git clone and then change a file using your favorite editor, and then git add, git commit, git push, or we can do that through pipelines. So let me show you an example of a pipeline that does precisely that. What you see on the screen is Argo Workflows pipeline, but the same logic, the same principles would apply with Jenkins or GitHub Actions or Tekton or whatever you are using. And the logic is simple. I'm cloning the repository with the manifests, and then I'm modifying one of the manifests by changing the tag to whatever was built in previous steps. And once I'm done, I'm adding and committing and pushing those changes back to the Git repository. From there on, I do not need pipeline, at least when deployment is in question, because Argo CD will detect those changes to the Git repository and do whatever needs to be done. Now, to be honest, I might need to run some tests afterwards and do some other things, and I would do those things using pipelines, but not for the deployment itself. That's done now through Argo CD. There is nothing for pipeline to do apart from modifying some manifests and pushing those changes back to Git. My mission today is to get rid of those steps. I will not try to get rid of pipelines altogether because I still need something to build my container images, to run tests, to do whatever else needs to be done. So my scope here is limited to the part that modifies Git repository by changing some manifests and pushing changes back to that same Git repo. I want to get rid of that part, and I want to do it with Argo CD. Since I'm lazy, I did not really want to write a completely new Kubernetes controller that would do all those things, monitor a registry with container images, figure out when I push a new image, modify some Git repository, and so on and so forth. Instead, I went out looking for a solution, and it did not take long because Argo CD has the solution, and it is called Argo CD Image Updater. So let me show you how that looks like. Let me show you how you can streamline part of your processes or remove part of your processes from pipeline by using Image Update. I will soon jump into the demo, but for now, let me give you a brief overview of what it does. Image Updater will monitor your container image registry. It could look for all the tags or tags in specific range or with specific naming convention. There are many ways how we can filter what it looks for. In its essence, the Image Updater will look for specific or all tags for a specific image. And whenever we push a new image, it will update automatically Git repository that contains the manifests that describe the application that uses that image. Now that might be confusing in such a short description, so let me jump straight into the demo and show you how that looks like, how it works, comment on certain features, and at the end we are going to talk about Argo CD Image Updater and see whether you should use it, what are pros, what are cons, and so on and so forth. Now I will save you from misery of watching me setting up the initial cluster and installing Argo CD and a few other things. I already did all the preparation in advance. If you want to replicate what I'm doing, the link to the gist with all the commands is in the description, so go and check it out. So here's my Argo CD up and running, and by the way, if you're not familiar with Argo CD, I have two things to tell you. First, shame on you. Go and check the videos. I have quite a few on this channel and the links are in the description. And the second is that I'm using app of apps here. I have production application that watches specific directory in a specific Git repository. And in that directory, I have only one application. I did not want to go crazy for this demo. I have only one app. Normally I would have many more, but one app should be enough to see how Image Updater works. The application is already up and running, and what I want to do next is to see how I can use Image Updater to streamline new releases of that application. So the first thing I need to do is install Image Updater. It's a simple kubectl apply command. So the installation itself is very easy, but we will need to make some changes to it so that it knows how to access the repository, how to access the registry, and a few other things. To be on a safe side, I'm going to double check the logs of Image Updater and see whether everything looks okay, whether I'm really ready to start using it. The important thing in the logs is the last entry that says processing results, applications 0, images considered 0, images skipped 0, images updated 0, and errors 0. What that means is that the Image Updater thinks that there are no applications that should be managed, and that's normal because we need to tell Image Updater which applications should manage. So you can install it without any fear of the consequences, because the Image Updater will do nothing unless we tell it to do something with an application or with more applications or with all our applications. We need to tell it which applications it should take into account when doing whatever it needs to be doing. So let me do just that. Let me modify the definition of the Argo CD application itself, not the manifests of my application, but only of Argo CD app. I am going to add a few annotations. First of all, I'm going to give it the list of images that it should monitor in my registry. To be more precise, I'm going to give it only one image, but this could be a list of multiple images if an application uses more than one image. Next, I'm going to define the writeback method and set it to be Git and to use a secret, and that secret will be stored in Argo CD namespace and it will be called git-creds. I could have told the Image Updater to go directly to Argo CD, but that's not a good idea. I do not want it to work against Argo CD itself. I want it to modify the definitions in my Git repository, because that's what GitOps is all about. Finally, to be on the safe side and to avoid potential miscommunication, I will tell it to use Git branch called main. And that's almost all there is to it. I defined a couple of annotations and I will soon push that manifest to the Git repository. Argo CD will figure it out and apply it to my cluster. And from there on, Image Updater will know that there is one application it should manage. Later on, there might be more. Actually, there will be more, there is more, but not in this demo. Before I push those things, I owe you an explanation about container image registries. By default, Image Updater supports Docker Hub, Google Container Registry, Red Hat Quay Registry, GitHub Docker Packages, and GitHub Container Registry. Bear in mind that that's out of the box. If you do not use one of those registries, if your container images are somewhere else, do not despair, because that's only what comes out of the box. There is a configuration file that you can use to add additional registries, and from there on it can use any registry you want, any registry you have. This is just what comes out of the box. Going back to annotations, if you paid attention, you notice that I said that it should use Git as the writeback method and that there will be a secret called git-creds. That secret should contain authentication to my Git repository. I'm using GitHub today, but it could be anything else. So I need to create that secret first, and then I will push those changes to Git. Do not expect from me explanation how to create Kubernetes secrets. Just do it or use the command in the gist. This is not a session about Kubernetes secrets, even though when I think about it, I should probably make a session on Kubernetes secrets. Nevertheless, that's about it. I created the secret. Now let me push those changes to the Git repo. Now let's go back to the logs of the Image Updater again and see what it will do. What will happen now that we added a few annotations to the Argo CD application manifest. By default, Image Updater is pulling changes from container image registries every 2 minutes. So it might take a couple of moments until it figures out that I added the annotation it needs, and until it figures out what I have in my container image registry. And while waiting for that to happen, let me ask you for a favor. If you like this video, please click the like button and the thumbs up and all the other things that you do in YouTube. And if you think that the channel itself is useful, please consider joining it. It's the price of a single coffee and it helps tremendously when paying all the bills that need to be paid for this channel. Look at that output. Image Updater figured out that my manifests are not using the tag that I might want to be using, so it cloned the repository, pushed something into that repo. I will show you what it pushed in a second. And from there on, Argo CD should detect those changes in that Git repo and do whatever Argo CD is doing, which is synchronizing the desired and the actual state in my Kubernetes cluster. And if you don't want to look at all those log entries, the key is in the last line that says, hey, applications 1. Now it thinks that there is one application it should manage. Image is considered also one. It found one image that matches the criteria, and the image is updated also 1. Now let's see what it actually did. Let me go to the Git repo and see what did we get. What did it do? We can see that it added a new file called .argocd source DevOps toolkit.yaml. And since that file did not exist before, it created it, and it's a very simple file. It just says, hey, customize images with RC DevOps toolkit : and then 9999999. I don't know how many nines there are, but there are many nines. Now in this case I'm using customize, but it could be pure Kubernetes YAML or it could be Helm as well. Any of the three should work, customize, Helm or pure Kubernetes YAML. Now going back to 9999999, I don't know how many nines we have in the tag over there. You might be wondering, hey, why did it use that tag? And the answer is very simple. That's the latest tag that I have in my container registry. I'm using Docker Hub today, but again, it could apply to any container registry. And now I realize that I forgot what I wanted to say. Yes, that's the latest tag, and I did not tell Argo CD which tag to use, which naming convention to use, what to do. So without any additional instructions, it just said, hey, yeah, I see that this is the latest tag, and I see that that tag is not used in your application right now. You probably want to update that application to use your latest tag. In most cases, that is not acceptable. The last tag, the latest tag, can be anything. It could be something that you want only in the development environment. So we need to figure out a couple of things. First of all, we need to choose which versioning format we are using and tell Image Updater to use that one. It would be semantic versioning or latest or digest or a name based on some regular expression. I think that those 4 are currently supported. Go to the documentation and check the details if you don't want to use semantic versioning, because today I am going to use semantic versioning. And I think that everybody should be using semantic versioning, but I might be wrong. In any case, what I want to do is tell the Image Updater, hey, use versions 1 and above all the way until version 2. Why would I do that? Well, because if I change the major version, remember I'm using semantic versioning, and if I change the major version, that means breaking changes. And in that case, I might not want that much automation because, hey, breaking changes do not happen often, and I should probably be on top of it and put a bit of extra effort into the process, maybe some manual verifications, whatnot. In other words, I will assume that currently I'm running one of the versions 1, maybe 1.2.3 or whichever, and I will tell Image Updater to keep updating my manifests automatically as long as I do not change the major version from 1 to 2. To do that is really simple and straightforward. I just need to change one of the annotations that I already added to the manifest. But before I do that, let me double check that it really did what it's supposed to do, and I will do that by going to Argo CD Web UI and double checking what is the current image tag of the deployment of my application. And yes, it works as expected. It is currently using Image DevOps Toolkit with the tag 9999999. I don't know how many nines. And if you're paranoid and if you do not trust Argo CD itself, then we can describe the deployment and see that yes, the actual tag of the image in my Kubernetes cluster is really 99999. Oh, it's tiring to say so many nines. So let's go back to taming this system and limiting it only to major releases 1. It can be any minor release, any patch release, I do not care. I want to have the latest release, but only within the scope of the major release 1. And to do that, I will change the annotation image list by adding :tilde 1 to the end where the tag normally is. If you are using semantic versioning and you do not know how to define the scope of the versions that should be managed by Image Updater, you can go to this page, which explains it all. It is explanation how semantic versioning works in general. This is not specific to the Image Updater, so go and check it out if you're not sure how to define the range that you need. And the link is in the gist, so check it out, gist, link in the description, all that. Long story short, all I have to do really now is to push those changes to Git. But before I do that, I will pull the latest version because Image Updater already changed the repository. And then I will add and commit and push, Git commands, you know them already. And from now on, Image Updater will know which range of tags to use. But there is still one more thing that I need to do. The main thing, the most important thing, and that thing is to create a new release. So I will build a new container image with the tag, which tag should I use? Let's say 1.2.3 because I'm not creative today. And then I will push that image to the container registry. And now all that's left is to wait until Image Updater figures out that there is a new image and that the tag of that image is within the specified range, meaning major release is 1, and then do the things that it needs to do. And while waiting, instead of contemplating about the fate of the universe or whatever you usually do while waiting for something, you might want to subscribe and like and join the channel and do the things that you should be doing, because let's face it, if you're watching these videos for so long, you like it, you find it interesting, you find it useful, so like the video as well. And we can see very similar output in the logs as we saw before. It figured out that there is something it should do, it modified Git repository, it pushed changes to the Git repository, and then it showed at the very end what it did, meaning that, hey, it considered one image, it updated one image, and that's about it. And if I go to the Git repo, I can see that the file that we were exploring before, the Argo CD source DevOps Toolkit YAML, now contains tag 1.2.3. And that's about it. That's all there is to it. It's simple. It is focused on one thing and one thing only, and it does that thing well. Or maybe not so well. There are some potential issues, but we are going to talk about them at the end of the video, which is coming very soon. But there is one more thing that I want to check first. I want to confirm that Image Updater will not go beyond the range of versions that I specified, which in my case is all major versions 1. So I'm going to build a new image with the tag 2.0.0, and I'm going to push that image, and I'm going to wait for a while, but I'm not going to force you to wait, so I'm going to fast forward a minute or two and take a look at the logs of Image Updater and confirm through those logs that it did nothing. I want it to do nothing because I pushed a version that it should not use. There is nothing in the logs saying that it modified anything because version 2 is not something it should deal with. And if I go to the Git repository, I can see that the file is untouched and we can live happily ever after. Now let's talk about pros and cons of Argo CD Image Updater and see whether you should use it or not. And if you should, when you should use it. This is a very small project and very focused project, and I like that. Its mission is clear. It is updating manifests in our Git repositories automatically whenever we push a new image to a container registry, and as long as the tag of that image is within the range of the versions that we want it to manage. It eliminates the need for us or pipelines to clone a Git repository, to modify manifests by changing the tag of the image or images that we want to release to some environment, and it pushes those changes back to Git. That's all it does, and that is its biggest advantage. It is doing what it's supposed to do and nothing else, and it is doing it fairly well. But there are a couple of cons as well, a couple of things I do not like. Not many though, there are only two. First of all, it cannot create pull requests. It would be great if it would create a pull request and then we could review the changes it did before merging it to the main line, and creation of those pull requests could execute some pipelines that would validate things, that would run tests, and whatever else we might be doing through pipelines. The second issue is a potential problem, a real one or not, depending on how you're organizing your manifest. Let me explain what's going on. Image Updater is adding an additional file to the directory where the manifests of the application are, where the base manifests of the application are. As a result, it might end up in an infinite loop. Imagine the following scenario. You write some changes to your application, you push those changes to the Git repo of that application, that triggers a webhook. Webhook notifies your favorite pipeline tool, which will run a process that will build a new image, run some tests, do some things, and at the end of those things, it will push the changes to a container registry. From there on, Image Updater will figure out that there are some changes over there and make the change to the manifest in that same repository. And that will repeat the whole cycle. You make changes to a Git repository, or Image Updater makes changes to the Git repository. You run a pipeline that builds container image, run tests, and whatever else it's doing, pushes that image to container registry. Image Updater updates the Git repo, and again, and again, and again, and again. In other words, you cannot keep the manifests of your application in the same repository where the rest of that application is, the code, the tests, the build scripts, whatever else you're having. And that's kind of limiting. I do not like that part. If you already have your manifest somewhere else, great, ignore completely this complaint. But if the manifests of your application are in the same repo where the rest of that application is, then you're going to have issues with the Image Updater if you combine it with pipelines for some other tasks, because again, infinite loop, very dangerous. You need to move your manifest somewhere else or not to use Image Updater. And if your manifests are already somewhere else, then I don't know why I'm talking to you. What I would like is for Image Updater to update Argo CD application manifest and not push some changes to the manifests of the application itself. That would be absolutely awesome, because then I would have freedom to organize my manifests any way I like. I could have Argo CD applications in one repository and base manifests of my application somewhere else, or I could keep them all together somewhere else, or I could do any combination if there would be more flexibility about the location of the file that Image Updater is creating. Besides those two complaints, pull requests and potential infinite loop depending on where you keep your manifests, Image Updater is fantastic. It's amazing. I love it, and I think you should be using it if the downsides are not a deal breaker for you.